Hey, folks, we're back, and I guess it was only a matter of time before somebody connected robots to 3D printers and has come up with an open source platform called from using Berkeley's open source humanoid light project. And they're saying that, in a matter of weeks for less than maybe 5K, you can build your own robot. I'm not quite clear how well it works, but Jack Gold, are we on the cusp of like having robots that people can just go down the store and pick up for a couple of grand? And how cheap can these things get?
Well, they can get real cheap depending on what you want them to do. Look, historically, let's look back, way back when. I remember when I was a kid, I used to play around with, ham radio and build my own stuff. Right? Today, you couldn't possibly do that just because of the sophistication of the circuitry. But in those days, you learned a lot by doing that. We're really at the same place with robotics right now. We're still in the early stages, and you can get some very sophisticated performance capabilities by 3D printers, by going down to your local hardware store and buying gears and valves and stuff. Right? It may not be as elegant as some people would like. But the ability to do this kind of sourcing of components and the ability to do experimentation by amateurs is actually great for the overall marketplace, because what it's going to show us is that, and at the end of the day, robots don't necessarily need to cost $250,000. Sure, you're going to have $250,000 robots running production lines at GM and Ford and Honda and Toyota. But for the rest of us, smaller, purpose-built robots are going to be the thing. And if you want to build your own, why not? Go for it. The tools are there, the capabilities are there, the experimentation is there, and I think this is a great thing for the overall robotics marketplace.
So when I can get a Daryl Hannah from Blade Runner robot, dial me up. But seriously, you know what this reminds me of? You guys, we're all of an age here. You remember early in the PC computer era, where you could build. I mean, that's how many of the well, not IBM obviously, but you go back to the Apples and a lot of these early computer models. At first, we used to have the computer user groups, and you could go to the group and they tell you, oh, you could get this circuit here, and you didn't have kind of the prefab motherboard that you got now and everything. But it started with tinkerers like this, right? They were building computers, and then they started building computers and kind of kept a recipe that they could repeat. Some kid in a dorm in Texas started doing that, and he did pretty well for himself, right? That's what I think we're going to see here. You're going to see tinkerers, but that's going to give rise to cottage industries, and it gives rise. And who's the Dell of robots?
I think that tinkerer is now a boomer playing around with robots in his basement of his mansion somewhere, and is going to go build Dell labeled robots, and we're going to get them from every other PC maker as well.
There is one final challenge though that we have to be very careful of, right? The old days, Al and I agree, the early guys, the Compacts of the world, the Dells of the world, Gateway, I mean, we can go through the whole names, right? But when you built a PC, there wasn't a whole lot, maybe other than electrical shock, a whole lot of risk to you as a person. Robots are a little different, and we have to be very careful that when people start building robots that are going to be wandering around the house, or you want them to do stuff for you, or they're cleaning or whatever they're doing, there is some possible risk, and so there's got to be some level of safety, security capability that
are you built. Talking about the laws of robotics? I mean,
yeah. Well, if it's physically moving around the house, it could do damage.
Well, I think that's an interesting concern, because right now you can go out and buy a commercial quadcopter with a video camera in it for $200, and that thing's got four swirling death propellers on it that are, they can take your head off if you're not careful, right? And some of the bigger ones. And so, I mean, these things exist. If you look at 3D printers, which is what makes this possible. The first 3D printers were up in the same price range, right? They were $5,000 units. Now you can get $100, $200 gets you a fully functional 3D print that can print everything that you need to build this robot, and it just doesn't have the electronic circuitry on it. So I think this is a great innovation. It follows, 2 months ago, Hugging Face announced their equivalent to this, a $3,000 to $5,000 robot. And I think this is brilliant innovation to open source and make all of this available. And it's really going to help, raise another generation of STEM interested people rather than people who sit around and play video games. And there's nothing wrong with playing video games, but
yes, there is.
the educational component of trying to, not even experimenting with it, but simply getting the parts together and printing your own parts and assembling this thing and getting it to do the robot equivalent of Hello World, right? In this case, these are, bipedal robots. But getting it to stand up on its own, that's a hell of an accomplishment. And I think that, especially for a younger generation, having the opportunity to play with this at reasonable price points is a remarkable opportunity for the world.
Yeah,
Jack Caller, is somebody going to hack into these things and I'm going to wake up one morning and there's going to be a robot chasing me around my house with a knife or what?
Well, yes. If you give me your address, we'll make sure that happens today. A little Chuck E. Cheese version of this, that would be great.
Well, I mean, why does it have to be someone hacking in? Maybe it just went off the rails. Yeah. As I said, shades of Blade Runner.
As a cybersecurity guy, I always think, and I appreciate Jack Gold's opinion too, that we really do have to think about security and bake security, both cybersecurity and physical security, into these things. And that's really hard when it's a free open source project. And, the developers are much more, they're Berkeley, PhD students are much more, interested in getting the thing to walk on its own than they are to make sure it doesn't get hacked. So yes, I think that is a concern that we do have to think about.
Yeah, no doubt they're doing an AI search to tell them how to do it.
Well, now they might still be using Google, but let me throw another kind of view at the panel here and get your thoughts. This is a great counterweight to what's going on in terms of robotic development at the enterprise industry level, right? I don't know how many of you watched, all those videos that we always see on those bad Google searches, but how well they're doing now with, four-legged robots being used for things like bomb situations, hostage situations, war situations, right? The big guys are building robots that really are pretty advanced, right? We're not just talking pure bipedal. I mean, they can run faster than animals and they don't fall down. And when they do, they get up and they marry a little AI into it and they're autonomous, right? I think we need this sort of homegrown, brew your own kind of thing, because that's going to, is that for the 1%ers? Is that for the authoritarian governments? Who gets to use this cutting edge, latest style? You need, this is the equivalent of a well-armed militia.
Yeah. Yeah, and the big ones are also 25, 30, 40K, 50K. We're talking about big bucks, right? You're certainly not going to buy one, or most people aren't going to buy one for their home. So we do need the lower end. We need the lower end to do specific tasks for us, which is highly valuable. I agree with you, Alan. It's going to be a move. I was going to say move down, but it's not really a move down so much as just less costly, right? Less complex. And there will be advantages that we'll see. Jack Power, I agree with you. The kids playing with STEM on these things are going to, some of them, the 2%, the 5%, whatever is going to be, are going to come up with some pretty interesting technology capabilities, as always happens in this marketplace. And so anything we can do to advance robotics in general, even if it's small steps, today you've got the high-end robotics I don't know what the number is, 20, 30, 40,000 perhaps engineers working on them. We're talking about in this space, millions and worldwide. And so there will be some real discoveries that come out of it, no doubt.
Mm-hmm. And for better and for ill, I'm sure there's some militia folks out there playing around with homegrown robots too, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
No doubt.
But it's open source. We're moving to robotics as open source, just as we did with software, just as to some extent we did with hardware. And so I think this is a good thing long term.
Yeah, the democratization of robotics is, I might argue, a little overdue. We need to put this into everybody's hands and let's see what happens.
I agree.
Agreed. All right, let's take a break on this one. We'll come back. We've got C-Block, Scattered Spiders, Shades of Thermonuclear War. I don't know. Is Matthew Broderick behind this one? You're watching Tech Strong, gang.